Hello and welcome. In today's video we're going to be drawing a cat. I just wanted to talk through some basic drawing techniques and very quickly showing you this cat. So I'm going to be using this Graphitone stick. It's a medium 4B. The reason I'm using this is so that it shows up really well to the camera for you. You'd probably want to just use an ordinary pencil and then afterwards you could either paint it or colour it with pencils, coloured pencils. So I'm just using an ordinary paper, sketch pad. You might want to do your drawing on a watercolour paper and then afterwards you could add some watercolour to it. So this is a picture I've had in the filing cabinet for some time. I've got a filing cabinet full of reference photographs that I use for classes here as well as YouTube, and this is one that's been in there for a while, but I'm assuming it's still on Pixabay. So if you go along to pixabay.com and write cat in the search bar, you'll get loads of lovely pictures of cats. So it's the same as when you're doing any animal or even a person, they're all going to be different. And the thing that I've talked about before is that you're very rarely, when you're doing either a person or an animal, going to get a photograph where they're absolutely dead straight onto the camera. Even then, we're not always symmetrical. So you're very rarely going to be doing a very easy symmetrical pose. It's nearly always going to be to one side or the other, and you've got to carefully look. Sorry, I'm distracted there. There's a little swallow outside the window flying past, and it was sort of looking at itself in the window. So sorry, I digress. So you're not going to get them straight on. So the poses are going to be slightly tilted. So it's all about observation and looking where things line up against each other. So although the eyes are slightly slanted there, you know, you can still sort of think about the whole head is slanted, you know, so still line things up, line them up to the ears, see where these points meet, see where the eye is in relation to the paw. I mean, that's quite a nice line if you go from the corner of the eye down, takes you to his first toe there. So all these things, as well as measuring, if we line up and see where things meet, it makes life easier. So if you go in a straight line from the edge of that ear down, you come to his eye. If you go across from his eye there, you come to where his elbow is, where the bend is there. All little things like that. Here, where his joint is, lines up with his nose. So if we get those things lined up, then we know that we're sort of heading in the right direction. So his head, although it's spherical that way, the actual fur on it, because we're seeing his neck here, because he's led down and he's crouched really low, which is what they do when they're waiting for a little mouse or whatever. When he's crouching really low like that, we're seeing his neck going up into his back, and because he's a tabby, it might not show to you on the camera, but he's got these stripes, and he's got a really lovely stripe there going off his head, down his neck and onto his back, and that gives us an idea of maybe where that spine is and where his shoulders are. So his shoulders, if you follow his foot, goes up to his sort of, I'm calling it an elbow, it's not really an elbow, is it? If you follow that line up there, you can probably guess that the shoulders here goes across to his spine there. And likewise on this side, you can follow that line, even though this part of the photograph isn't in focus because the camera is focused on his face. You can follow that little elbow there and up past his ear, and we can see that the shoulder's about there somewhere. So knowing these things is going to help make him much more convincing, rather than just setting off and drawing him. Sit and have a little look first and think about where things are. You know, some people, I see people do this quite often, is they don't really absorb the photograph. They look at it quickly and start drawing, and they could quite easily just draw a line right across there, when in fact you've got a few things going on there. This is leg, so this is his foot here and it goes behind his head, and then this is leg. So you really need to distinguish that from his body, otherwise he's just going to look like one big blob. Okay, so we'll set off now. So first things first, you want to leave yourself plenty of space to get some of this in. You don't want to do in all this detail really. I mean, we want the detail to be in his head, his face, but we want to get those lines in, especially of where his arms, where his legs are. We're turning him into a person, aren't we, calling them arms? So I would set off with this shape, and it's not straight on to us, it's slightly curved. So by getting that ellipse slightly on one side like that, we're already getting the shape of where his head is. And don't forget his neck is going on to that as well. And that's just a guideline. We're going to be adding to that. And actually what we could do is put a little round shape in for where, because obviously this is protruding. So again, don't think it's flat. It's not flat. It's 3D and this is protruding. So I'm going to put another bit of a circle here where that nose and mouth is going to fit into. And again, your lines aren't going to be as heavy as this. You're not going to see them all like this, the same as mine. And I'm just thinking of how far down his eyes are, and actually they're probably about halfway down. And again, it's a sphere. His head is round, so don't put the eyes in a straight line. They're there. You know, and think about his head coming this way as well. So those lines I talked about earlier are going to take us off back. I'm just going to put those in, and it's just to give us a sense of the direction of where it's going. Okay. So now you can sort of start and build up the face shape. I'm not going to bother with the rest of his body at the moment. I'm just going to get the head shape in to begin with, and the size of his ear. So if you measure the size of his ear, it's similar to the gap between. It's also similar, so if you look at that measurement from the eye, top bottom of the ear to the corner of the eye and the top of the nose. So that's going to give us a bit of an indication of how far we need his ear to come up to, and it was right, I'd seen it right, it's about there somewhere. And it's got a little kink in it, but all these things like the little kinks and that you can put in afterwards. You don't have to worry about getting those in straight away. The first things first is the measurements and the basic shapes. So like I said, you go down from there, we see the corner of his eye, and his eye finishes about halfway there, so that takes us to there. So that's going to get that nice shape of the eye, and then it goes down. Not this side. It's a similar gap. Again, the width of the eye is a similar gap to the nose there, and this one. And because we're following this line here, we're getting them in the right place. And it can all be refined afterwards, but getting them in the right place to begin with is the main thing. So don't be worrying about the detail. I can't put too much detail in with this pencil anyway, because it's, as you can see, we've not got a big tip on there. These are actually water soluble as well, so if you did want to, you could add water to them to build up your tones as well, so you could do a bit of a tonal study with these pencils, so they are quite handy to have. I take them to live drawing as well, because if you're doing a 5-minute kind of quick drawing, you can soon get some colour down, some tone down rather. So it looks a bit funny there just with those little black bits that I've put in, because it hasn't got the rest of the colour in there, looking a bit like an alien. So if we come up from the corner of, down from the corner of that ear, it's there to the corner of the eye, so that gives us the area that that ear starts, and it goes off at that kind of angle and comes down nearly to the side of his head, so nearly to about here somewhere, and it comes lower than this one because his head's tilted. So again, we've got a nice kinky bit going in and out there. Those of you who've got cats and you stroke them, you'll be aware of these little soft parts on the side of their ears here. So that does help if you know the animal that you're drawing. So if you're a horse person and you keep horses, you'll be much better at drawing them than maybe if you don't have a cat. You know, if you're likewise, if you're a dog person, whatever you have and you're familiar with, particularly if you're familiar with touching and stroking them, it's going to make it a lot easier to draw. So things like the whiskers, they're all incidental, you can put them in later. The main thing is getting this shape in, which is going to make him a cat as opposed to any other animal. So we'll come down the side now with that shape there, and look at the length of the nose from the middle of the eyes to there. And then again, it's very similar to the length of the eye, so just double check that's right. And that is where we need to start and put the shape of the actual nose, the nostrils rather. So I've actually got that a little bit too wide, I'll just bring that up a bit. And you see how it sort of tilts to one side, because again we're not seeing the whole of it, we're seeing it from the side. and then a tiny little line down to where this bit comes, and this is quite distinctive shape, but because we're seeing his head's tilted, we're seeing more of this side than we are that, so that's half the length of that side. So if it goes out that much that way to the edge of his nose there, on this side it tilts more down and it ends up in line with about the edge of his eye there, so that's right. So we can see that that all helps with the tilt. So he's got that, and then he's got his chin underneath there, which is that line that we put in earlier, but we've maybe come a bit too far down with that. So then we've got his chin. So now we can think about putting this in correctly, this outside line. So that circle there helps us, and if you look at that, you're coming in line with the tip of his nose, so go from the tip of his nose to there. And at this point you would get your rubber and rub all this out at this side. I'll just go over it a bit more heavy so you can see which is the line that I'm working with. And that lines up with that, and then through that, it doesn't really come out the other side. It does, it's fluffy there, but basically this sort of merges into one and goes off behind the ear, because this is joining up to his neck, so it actually goes behind his ear. So this, all these can be rubbed out, so make it a bit more determined where the actual shape is, and then you can see more easily. Get those a bit more rounded. I've got them quite pointy on the end of his ears. They're a bit more rounded than that. I'm saying he might be a she. She might be a she. This is a lovely shape. Can you see that? Where it goes around and then up. So carry that line on here, because that's really cat-like. And these diamondy shapes. I'm starting fiddling with too much detail. It doesn't matter about that detail at the minute. You can do that all later. These are things you can come back and keep looking at different parts. So again, here you can sort of see the edge of the nose there, and then we've got another line there. And then look carefully at the shape of that nostril, because that makes the shape of him overall. Again, you're seeing the top of the nose and the side of the nose, but that's all things that can be refined later on. And you can carry on refining them as you put in your colour in and everything else. So what we were doing was this shape here, and this is this white fluffy bit where his whiskers are joined to. So all this is underneath. A little chin. And his markings actually carry on that line of his eye, which is rather nice, and the same on this side. So think later on, you can come back and do the markings later on, and all his little hairs, make sure you get these hairs going off his ear and things like that. These are all things you can come back to doing once you've got this basic shaping. So now let's look at his feet. So if you look, this is foot, and then we've got a little bit of foreshortening here. So the bit you're seeing is there, this bit is foreshortened, all of this part here is foreshortened, we're not seeing that, and then we're seeing the top part of his leg there. So if we just concentrate on the foot to begin with, it's starting off from where this little bit is here, and the edge of it's coming out to the side of the tip of his ear, so about here somewhere, and then down and round, and it joins up just there. So it's just like a mitten to begin with, and then we can put the toes in. Got one big toe coming towards us there, and then this is a smaller toe on the side. So again, we have a lot of cats, we have a lot of farm cats, but we don't have a pet cat in the house because I'm allergic to them. So I'm not really that familiar with where everything goes. I'm familiar with looking at them in the yard when they're sort of crouching and everything. So now if we look at this shape, so think about the overall shape of the foot and then put the toes in. Don't try doing the toes first. So just look at the overall shape and where it comes to. So it comes to about here somewhere. So it's really nicely tucked under his chin, so it's quite a cute little picture. And then pop the toes in. And again, you'll have your ordinary pencil, and you'll come and rub some of these lines out and really refine it and put the extra detail in. And a lot of the shape comes afterwards also with the colours that you put on and the shadows, particularly the shadows. So now let's look at where, because we've got this foreshortening here, we can see where that comes to. It comes to just below his cheek there. So this is all foreshortened. I keep wanting to say arm. He's not got an arm, has he? He's got a leg. And it's difficult to get these joints in because of the stripes. So really think about where those stripes are. So elbow wise, we're about here somewhere, and look at it's sort of going down, so that's sort of an elbow and then across. So try and think about where the bones and the joints are rather than looking at the pattern, because the pattern goes on afterwards. That's just his fur. And so now, I talked earlier about where we thought that, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Shoulder blade is, shoulder bone, and it comes straight down. So it's cutting off the tip of the ear, so it wants to come from about here somewhere. So straight down, and that's going to give us that real crouchy feeling if we know where the top of his shoulder is. It's giving that real nice feeling of his arm coming around him like that. So you might have a different photograph. I'm sure you'll be able to find this photograph on Pixabay. I'll try and find it myself actually and find the link for you. If I can't, I'm sure it'll be there somewhere, because I'm sure there's hundreds of cats on Pixabay. So now I'm going down from where that shoulder blade was. I'm going across and thinking about where the second shoulder blade was up here, and we can see that goes, sorry, I'm holding the picture out of the way. We can see where the second shoulder blade is. It comes right down to here, and if we line that up, it's coming sort of below the eye, so we know it's about here somewhere, and it's coming out past the ear. So it's just going across the tip of the ear, past the ear, and down and around, and you'll see that little curve there if you look at the picture very carefully. And then look where it joins up. It joins up just below where that line is of that eye, that what we talked about earlier, that shape of the eye there. So he's looking quite cute now. He's really tucked into them hands. It looks very different from the photograph at this stage, and you might panic at this stage thinking you've got things wrong. The reason it looks completely different to the photograph is really down to the colours and the tones and the shadows. You know, his head's looking quite big, but once you get that white in and you get some of these shadows behind, it's going to look quite different. And this shape here maybe just, you know, wants a little refining. It's more in and out, it's not just a straight line. But it won't be once you get the, you know, put all the little hairs in. So we've got the shoulder blades there. We'll just make that a bit darker. We'll think about where this one is up here. And then we'll go across with his tummy. He's actually, I would say, he's a rather well-fed cat, because he just looks like he's got quite a bit of tummy going off in that direction, and then his back goes straight up from the tip of his ear. And then I think we ought to put the step in just to show that he's sort of hanging over the edge of this step here. This makes it a lot more convincing pose, really. Whether you put the background in often depends on the picture that you're working from, but I think with that we really want it to get that feeling that he's led there on that. And of course you'd put these shadows in, and all this is going to really alter the shape of him as well. Getting in dark, can you see in between the 2 feet there? That's really dark, and getting these negative shapes in is also going to enhance the shape of his face. And that's all going to come when you add your paint and your colour later on. Really look at where it's darkest. And that's going to help with his shape. So just even a little tiny bit like that really enhances it. So I think that's probably enough for me to talk about, because everything else on top of that is just detail. So look very carefully, like I said, at the shadows. Look very carefully at the markings. When you're drawing the hairs, draw in the direction that the hair is going. This applies to all animals. When you do the hairs in the direction that they're going, it makes it much more convincing, and it's going to make that head much more round. So like I said before, the nose is protruding from that. We've got the back of the ear showing. That's something that I hadn't noticed. So the back of the ear is showing there and there. You think about it. Think about feeling the back of that cat's ear. They are attached. So they're a 3D object, and the little hairs on the back of the ears are going in that direction. The ones on the top of his head are going there. On his nose here they're going upwards, but here they're going down, and here they're going like this across, and that's making the shape of that nose come out, because that's the way the hair grows on them. And likewise these ones are going down, and that's all going to make that shape of the face more if you go around his face with the hair rather than just brushing the whole thing in. I mean, here we've actually got, I mean, he's got a darker patches of hair there, but if you look carefully at the little hairs here, they're all going over here as if they're a little eyebrow, and you'll find that on a lot of animals. They've got this, you know, they have got a brow bone the same as we have. If you think about the skeleton under there, there is a bone there that's protecting the eye socket, and the little hairs go around it and they go around the face. I'm not going to do them all, but this is for you to think about when you do it. Go in the direction of the, think about the face as being 3D and these hairs are going over it, and look carefully at where each little hair is going. Likewise with the arms. I've said arms again, the legs. This cat has legs, not arms. Just look at where they're going, because here, as I said before, it would have been easy to think this was all one big block because it's such a, you know, an out of focus area of the picture. But if you look at the hairs, because this is his leg, they're coming this way, and then here on his tummy they're going that way, so that helps us realise that that's leg and that's tummy. Okay, so I'm hoping you found that useful. A lot of what I've talked about I have talked about before when we were doing animals, and we've done all sorts of different animals, but it's nice, you know, just to go over them, and all these will apply to different animals as well, particularly those covered in fur. So it's not always easy doing things that are covered in fur because you've got to really imagine the skeleton underneath. I mean, I'm looking at him now, I'm thinking, well, that's far too straight there, it comes in a little bit, but all that's going to come with you going back, keep looking at the basic shapes and refining it. So here you see in the back of the neck joining up there. Okay, so have fun with that. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Excuse me, my voice has gone. Sorry, I've got a tickle. So in the meantime, enjoy your painting and drawing, and I shall be back again with more videos soon. Thanks for watching and bye for now.